So thanks everyone for joining us. I'm Jeremy Faludi, Associate Professor of Sustainable Design Engineering at TU Delft. And most of this webinar is going to be run by Tamara Hoveling, one of my PhDs. And we are part of the DiCE project. So DiCE is sort of an acronym for Digital Health in a Circular Economy. And it's a collaboration of 20 different companies, universities, and other organizations from 9 different countries funded by Horizon Europe. And we've all been working together for about 4 years now, and we're going to be wrapping up in September. We're trying to research how to make medical device design and healthcare product design generally more circular and sustainable. And if you joined the first webinar, you already know the background on this. But if you didn't join, just quickly, we're doing this because healthcare has a surprisingly big environmental impact globally. If the healthcare sector were a country, it would be the 5th largest greenhouse gas emitter on the planet, more than all global airplane travel and ocean shipping combined. Or like in the UK, the NHS is 7% of the entire country's carbon footprint. And we've done research on what the barriers to circularity are and how we can provide you methods and tools to overcome those barriers as you do product development. And so Delft's role, TU Delft's role in the DiCE project is to do green redesigns of 4 products for Johnson & Johnson and Philips, who are 2 of the other partners in the consortium. And our final role is to put this design guide out into the world to help you and anyone else design more circular healthcare products. And so there are videos on this, which we will release publicly on YouTube fairly soon. And we will also have an in-person event on September 23rd in Brussels that is also open to the public. So if you want info on that, you should be able to find it on LinkedIn if you search for digital health and the circular economy, or if you want, it looks like Marion posted a link in the chat right here. So thank you, Marion. And I think that's it. So yeah, Tamara is our PhD. She's been doing a great job and is going to be graduating soon, very soon, actually. And yeah, so she will take it from here.
Yes, thank you. And before I continue, I just want to say that the meeting is being recorded and we are planning to share the recording online later on. So if you don't want to be recorded, keep your camera off. Okay, you can already see my slides, so I'll give a little bit of a recap of the introduction that I did in the last webinar as well. So Jeremy already explained the DiCE project. Here's an overview of the partners we're working with. And as you can see, all the different parts that you need in the device development, use, and disposal process are included in this project, even with the business models and the assessment of the actual environmental impacts. And since we both are from TU Delft, we've been happy to contribute to the design part at the very first part of this trajectory. So, as Jeremy already said, we have a lot of impact in healthcare, and this is partly also due to things becoming more digital, being more embedded with electronics, while also being more disposable. And we think circular design is promising, but it comes with a lot of challenges. So just to give an example, and we found a lot of barriers, but grouped them into 6 categories. One of the biggest ones was the safety risks, and it's important to keep in mind also as an input for our design guide is that the safety risks are sometimes perceived risks rather than actual safety risks, meaning that better be safe than sorry. And similar things are the case for regulatory compliance. It's not only about the actual compliance, but also the interpretation thereof and the way it is translated into protocols. So there's a lot of barriers that we need to tackle during the actual medical device development. If you want to read more about barriers and opportunities, you can read the paper we wrote on this, but I will not go more in detail in this now. But it's definitely what the design guide was based on. One of the actually, many of the barriers were related to collaboration, who takes responsibility, how do we communicate with each other, and how do we handle this complexity of this whole system that's called like the circularity in healthcare. So we also dived into that and we developed the circular healthcare flows visual, which is what the previous webinar was about. But basically, it adapts the circular economy principles to healthcare. It standardizes circular terminology and it visualizes the circular healthcare product flows, and hopefully will then also help in circular decision making. So this is what that overview looks like. And again, I will not explain it now because I did explain it in the previous webinar. But it shows just how complex the system is and how many choices there must be made in this process. If you want to know the background of this is the link to the paper about the circular healthcare flow visual and how it was developed. But then how do we implement this whole principle of circularity in medical device development? And that's what this webinar today is about. We developed a circular design guide, and it will be open to the public, and indeed we will share it in the final event in September. And maybe nice to know, we also have it in 4 different other languages. We have Italian, Spanish, German, and Chinese to make it more accessible for different groups of people. And I also added here again the final event, but you already know that. So the link is in the chat if you wish to come, which would be really nice because we will not only present the design guide, but also all the outcomes of the DiCE projects by all the different partners and how that comes together. So before I go into the design guide, we also have the actual files of the visual that I just showed and the design guide itself already online on the DiCE website. I earlier also posted all these links in the chat, but I don't know if you can see it because I did it before starting the meeting. You can also look through the guide online in the form of a flow paper. That's the second link, and the bottom link is a full design guide explanation video in case you still have some questions after the webinar. So I will open the guide now. Okay, so this is the digital version of the guide. We also have printed versions. So if you come to Brussels, you might be able to grab one of those. Most important to know beforehand is that we looked into responsibilities and users. So we identified different roles, and I call them roles instead of people because multiple roles can be carried out by one person or the other way around. One role can be split into multiple people depending on company size or team size. Every role is involved in every step in the guide, but some roles take a bit more responsibility over others or are triggered to put more input into certain parts. So we have a bit of an introduction. On several pages, you have a click through to a video that explains more about that part of the guide. And of course, we also added the visual into the full design guides. Now, this is the guide structure. There's 5 different phases. And on the right side of this page, you see how each phase fits into the medical device development process. So before you start, or actually during the start, we have phase A, which is define. And here we aim to understand why we're actually developing a solution. What is the clinical needs and what are the environmental hotspots that we need to focus on in the continuation of the development process? Then after that, we start to really question, like, what are the things that we assume, for example, certain protocols or norms or practices are done simply because it has always been done this way. So we will really question the current practices and device models to be able to identify what we can change to reduce the environmental impact. I know that sounds a bit vague, but this includes strategies like refuse, replace, rethink, and reduce. Knowing that, we will create a value proposition. And starting from there, we go into the system design, which is C. So in phase C, we look into, for example, if you want to recycle a device. At first, we identify which strategies fit with your device type. But let's say you want to recycle a device. How do you make sure it actually ends up with the recycling facility? So all these parts of the system are determined here. And from there, you have more detailed criteria, which we will then embody in a device, meaning we will design the device to fit into the system. This is more about, for example, the material choices and the cleaning strategies that we need for that specific device. After that, we will evaluate in phase E. So we have some concepts that we will evaluate on the things that we also evaluated in A. So we can compare whether we have actually improved the environmental impact as intended. Now, every phase addresses several strategies. So we have definitions for the strategies exactly as they are in this circular healthcare flows visual. And we divided them over the different strategies. So the higher level strategies, the red ones, are in the question part. And then circulate and embody both address the real circular strategies from a different level, system or product. Now, then we go per phase. I will not go into detail in all of it, but every of the phases has an intro page. And for example, here also it states which strategies are involved. So we have a little introduction of what happens in phase B, or depending on which page you are on, where we are in the development process, which are the main responsible roles. And as I said before, all roles are involved in every part, but some of them are more important in certain parts. And again, a video per phase that is a bit of a shorter explanation on what you need to do there in case you need more explanation. So that's the same for every phase. I think I will give phase C as an example. So here you have already defined what more or less will be your value proposition, and we will start looking into the system. This is a bit of a complex page to start with, so sorry for that, but it's very dependent on your specific device type, what kind of circular design you're going to do. So we created 2 pages, this one and this one, about the device type. So you have a little decision tree to help you determine which type you fall into and which circular strategies are most likely to be suitable for your device. Then based on that, we will generate ideas for those strategies, taking into consideration the system design considerations, such as the traceability, the workflow fit, a different regulation, etc. And what exactly we mean by the system design considerations is listed on the next page as an example. And of course, some of them are more relevant when you have a specific hotspot like transport or use. And with hotspot, I mean where the environmental impact is highest. Then we ask you to combine these ideas into 3 or more different ideas. And it could be that you need more iteration, and for that need to go back to a different phase. And through the guide, we also added some examples. I will show another one soon, but they click through to later on. Then we have the ideas established on the previous page. And then we go into collection. So we explain a little bit about a patient could return something to a healthcare facility or to a manufacturer, or a healthcare facility could like clean and reuse something themselves, but you also need internally to collect something then, or the healthcare facility returns to the manufacturer. And for all these types of collection, we provide an example. So you understand a bit better what we mean by it. And you can also click back to the page where you came from. So in C here, we just collect all the system design and collection pod ideas, and then we combine it in the wrap-up page, what the design directions are that we want to continue with in the next phase, which is D, which is the product design. So every phase ends up with the wrap-up. So you kind of collect all the things that you did in that phase into the final page of the phase, so that you know your starting point moving forward. Just to give another example of the examples, sometimes it's hard to understand like what it means to standardize something, for example, here. And how that can improve environmental impact. So for each of these types of things, like multifunctionality, standardization, device sharing, we also add examples, and you can click through them to understand like why do we think you should rethink this, or an example of where they tried to rethink something, but that actually had bad consequences, so that you don't make the wrong decisions accidentally. That makes sense. I think I'm going to stop going through the pages now. Maybe I'll show the ending of the guide. That will be nice. So we evaluate the sustainability and the business value against each other, because just measuring environmental impact will not bring you the most valuable idea. Both need to be in balance. So we come back to business value assessment criteria that you have established earlier in the guide, to see which concept would be best, and which to continue with. So we have an implementation matrix where you can put your ideas into and then see the highest impact on sustainability, or the reduction of impact, versus the highest business or clinical value. And then you know which ones you probably want to prioritize. And you can make a plan for what you want to implement now and what you want to plan for later. So I think that was my sneak peek. I think it's a lot to go through in detail. So if you do want to get the full overview, I do recommend to watch the video, because that's more of a summarized video of the full thing. But I hope I give you a bit of an idea like what the pages look like and what our intent is with this guide. So please do share your questions or let me know if there's anything else that you'd like to see.
So yeah, what questions do people have? And feel free to just unmute yourself and ask verbally. If you're shy, you can write questions in the chat. We just are that we might potentially miss it if you type into the chat. But yeah, we are happy to hear your questions.
Thank you for
Yeah.
your presentation, Tamara. I have a short question regarding the kind of scope of the system of interest. Is this only kind of concerned with the medical device as the whole, or have you considered some kind of components level and subsystems level? Is this applicable for this or not? Thank you.
I missed the first part of the question, sorry.
Is the guide applicable for kind of components level or subsystems level of the device, or it is supposed to be for the device for the entire device?
I would say it is for the entire device, or maybe I'm misunderstanding.
Well, although I think you could apply it to components as well. It's definitely constructed with whole devices in mind, but yes, you could do it when thinking of particular components as well. It's just there would more likely be parts of the guide that you would skip over, and you just need to use more judgment about what to use and what to not bother with.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it looks like Katie has a question.
Yeah, hi. Have you given much thought to the specific challenges around single-use medical devices, like things that are used in surgery situations? And can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so we actually try to focus a lot on that, like higher risk devices in surgeries, because that are the ones with a lot of barriers, and looks into the different types of sterilization, disinfection, and obviously there are still a lot of things that we simply cannot just simply reuse. But there's definitely a room for improvement. We have come across devices that are sterilized where we wonder whether that's really needed, or things that are disposed of without being used. So I think those things are addressed between the lines in the guide. And we also added in the appendix a part of explanation on how devices should be cleaned and what that entails. So yeah, I think that is captured. I don't know if you had a specific question about that topic or.
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Cool. And yeah, just to reiterate what Tamara was saying in the very beginning, which might not have been as clear as in the first webinar where she showed the whole diagram of circular flows, is that because the design guide is structured around the R strategies, the higher we encourage people to design things for the higher level R strategies, reuse and repair and remanufacture and things like that. But we know that it's not viable for all products, or even the best idea for all products. So there are things about recycle as well.
That's
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, and I see a question in the chat. Has the draft guidance been pilot tested by some health device manufacturers already? And I guess there are two questions here. So that was number one. And number two was, how do you plan the experiences solutions in the circular design guide to be shared after the completion of the DiCE project?
The second question is not that easy to answer, I'd say, because we still have to figure that out. But for the first one, we did not do a pilot test like where people would use it for months, but we definitely did user testing on a smaller scale. So we kind of co-developed the guide with professionals who would be using this guide in the future. So they went through a part or full of the design guide and gave feedback, and then we went back to them. So we did it a bit in that manner. So it would be nice if someone decides to actually use the guide for a longer period of time to see like what their opinion is.
Yeah, we're definitely open to feedback. And then for the number two about how the circular design guide will be shared, it will definitely be available for free download as a PDF after DiCE is over, and the DiCE website will still be up for. Marion, I think you know the number, but I think it's like 4 years or 5 years after the end of the project. Is that right?
Yeah, it's 4 or 5 years, yeah.
Cool. So, so at least for those years, you can just download the PDF from the DiCE website. And actually, yeah, Marion, can you paste the URL for that in the chat, maybe?
Yep, sure, I'll do that.
Cool, thanks. And so yeah, so hopefully that answers your question, but if it doesn't, pop up your hand or put another comment in the chat. And I see that there's another question in the chat. To what extent does the guide build in aspects of ISO 5900X series?
Yeah, good question. We actually did look into the different upcoming standards about circular economy and sustainability, and we also saw that there were quite some things that were conflicting with what we require for medical devices. I believe we do include a lot of things related to those ISOs, but more like we don't mention it directly, but things like, I don't know if this is part of it, but the right to repair we also looked into. We think that it will be applicable to medical devices as well eventually, so that those are definitely things that are included there, but we do not literally list like you need to do this for this ISO or something like that.
Cool. And yeah, and again, if that doesn't answer your question, feel free to ask more.
Yeah.
And then there's another question in the chat. Hello, I'm Richard Amfo-Otu. And what about consumables like waste liners and the non-infectious waste?
Yes, so as Jeremy said before, we did make this guide on a level of full device. So I know waste liners may or may not be part of a system, but in theory, if you go through the guide and follow the steps, then non-infectious waste would probably be reused eventually if you do follow the steps as intended, because we do use a bit of a hierarchy of the strategies where, for example, recycling is the last option. So we did take that into account. I guess that you just end up in a different category when you follow this decision tree thing that I just showed. If it's non-infectious, it's a lower MDR class. So that means that other strategies are more likely to apply than when it's highly infectious, for example.
Actually, yeah, do you want to pull up that page in the guide, or just to show that little, we have a decision tree in the guide about what kind of product are you designing, and that helps to steer you towards our strategies that are more relevant or useful for that product category. And again, I think this is also kind of an echo of the earlier question about single-use devices, and then also an echo of the earlier question about components of products rather than whole products. And usually when you're redesigning a component, you go through the same process. It's just that what you define as the system is uh, more like the product as a whole, whereas if you were redesigning the product as a whole, then the system would be, the hospital and the doctors and nurses and the purchasers and the supply chain and this bigger thing. But if you're doing a component, then the system is smaller. It's more on the level of the component. So, okay, I see you have the page pulled up. Do you want to sort of show people through it?
I can quickly explain it a bit more. So the first question is the criticality level. So we base this on MDR classes and actually split it into 2 pages. So if you're class 1 or 2A, you stay on this page, which is, I think, the type of device you are talking about. And then it's differentiate in session-based use or continuous use. I'm thinking a liner. Oh, it could be both depending on the application, but let's say it's session-based and it's low cost. Then it's a session-based use consumable. And then we say, okay, something like this you don't often maintain or repair because it's a very cheap, well, currently it's a cheap disposable often. We try to reuse it. It's probably very easy to clean if you design it in the right way, especially if it's non-infectious. But refurbish or remanufacture is likely to be a more simpler device that you're not going to completely remanufacture, take apart in different parts and replace parts. So then we more quickly, after the reuse cycles, go to either repurpose it. It's often easier to repurpose something outside of healthcare because then you have less of the hygiene rules and things like that, or we recycle it. Or in some cases, you could also renew, and by that we mean like it could be more bio-based or well, not bio-based, but I thought I heard something, but I hope that clarifies it a bit, what our thinking process behind this is.
Cool. And yeah, any other questions? Or since Tamara zipped through the design guide very briefly, if you have questions about what happens in the details of other steps, we'd be happy to talk about that as well.
I have a question. So how do you hope for this guide to be used and by whom, and like how do you want it to be implemented in the future?
So the target group of the design guide is the actual people involved in the development of the medical devices. So we're thinking of mostly the medtech companies, and that could be bigger or smaller companies. And how we intend them to be used, well, we're promoting it, and we hope that people are willing to give it a try. So I'm happy to bring one to you if that's possible, if you're close by. But yeah, that's the intention. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, our ideal goal would be for all companies in the healthcare sector, whether they do medical devices or at-home devices or or non-infectious waste or whatever, we would love to have the entire industry redesign all of their products in more sustainable ways. Obviously, we know that that is a long shot, but part of the way that the design guide is constructed is to try to help you make evidence-based decisions on what your priorities should be so that you don't have to spend lots of time and money redesigning all aspects of all devices, but instead just focus on the aspects of your devices that have the highest impacts, those hotspots that Tamara mentioned. And then you can focus your design and engineering and business energy on those things and not waste your time with all sorts of other things, not waste your time having a checklist of 50 different things that are sustainable design methods that you could generally apply to any product, but rather just look at the things that will make the most difference for your product. And then at the end of the process, like Tamara also said, there's the step for evaluation of, did your new redesign ideas actually make a significant improvement? And rather than just taking a guess of something that you think will be nice, like we've heard a lot about how repair is important, let's design it for repair, but maybe in your product that doesn't actually matter and doesn't help. And so maybe a different idea that you had that you didn't pay much attention to, you'll run the numbers and it'll actually improve your impacts much more than the idea that sounds really good. So again, it'll help you make evidence-based decisions and not waste your time on money on things that don't matter. So that is it. And then, yeah, I see that Tamara posted links to the paper and the design guide and the DiCE event and other things. And so if there are no other questions, we do have 5 minutes left in the time slot. So if anyone does have any questions, go ahead.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
Regarding like hospital and purchasing managers wanting to have more sustainable products, have you found that they are like hesitant to implement like sustainable products, or how does the hospital view kind of the practice of including more circular products in their workflow?
So my reply to that would be, it depends who you ask. I did meet a lot of people who are very willing to implement more sustainable things. At the same time, they are very limited in what they can do when it comes to devices, because they follow the protocol of the manufacturer. So the manufacturer should definitely take the responsibility and tell them like, hey, I have a sustainable device. It won't cost you much more, maybe even less. Hopefully that would be best. Huh? And then I don't think there would be that much hesitation if we just tell them like, hey, look, this is safe, this is more sustainable. Most of them will probably at least try it.
Yeah, and one thing about design guides generally, or sustainable design tools and methods, is that a purchaser in a hospital can do a theoretical version of this sort of thing, or they can use it as a scorecard to rate the various products that are available on the market. So you could, so if you're a purchaser, you could take the whatever 4 different products from 4 different companies that you're considering and sort of theoretically run them through this design guide, not as a redesign exercise, but as a scoring exercise to see how well they have already done the things that the design guide suggests. Now that's definitely not what we designed this for. That's not how we intended this design guide, but it is a hack that usually works quite often with most design guides. Cool.
Thank you.
All right. And let's see. Oh, and I see another comment in the chat. Procurement rules can be very restrictive and slow to adjust as well. Yeah, this is definitely true. And this is for understandable reasons, but it does not help quick adjustment. It's good to push it on the supply side as well and combine it with integrating more incentives for sustainability in procurement rules. Yeah, so that's definitely a good point. So people who are doing procurement, they can use something like our design guide as a scorecard and look at products that they think are not doing a very good job and talk to the manufacturers and push them to say, hey, we would like you to design a greener version of this product. Look at this design guide here, all these points that you could be doing. But yeah, that's the demand side push, but then the supply side from the manufacturers is where we were aiming this design guide. And I see there's another follow-up comment by Etienne again. This was a good project by UNDP and Healthcare Without Harm on the procurement side, funded by the Swedish SIDA. Yeah, and gave a link to a project.
Yeah, it's nice if maybe in some at some point, because I've spoken to several procurement parties at different hospitals, different types of hospitals as well. And what I noticed is that they all had different ways of assessing sustainability, completely different, and some of them based on LCA, but that would take them too much time, so they do some guessing. Others just a checklist. So it would really be nice if we can somehow standardize this kind of procurement practices so that manufacturers can actually take it into consideration in the way that it's assessed in the procurement. But that's just a thought.
Yeah, and other people have worked on this kind of stuff. That wasn't part of the DiCE project, but yeah, it is definitely important to build the demand side as well as the supply side. And okay, it is 45 minutes after. Tamara, do you have any final comments, or should we wrap this up?
I think we can wrap it up. Thank you all for being here. It was really nice to see so many people show up. And we will share the recording on LinkedIn. And if you do have some questions later on, feel free to send a message to LinkedIn too.
Cool. So thank you very much. And that is it.